Good morning. Welcome to Where You Live. I just needed to wait a moment here to hear old Blue Eyes begin here before speaking again. If you're just joining us, we've got a great show for you. We are going to be talking to, in just a little bit, Dr. Gary Solomon from the College of Southern Nevada. He has experienced, he said, a dysfunctional relationship with homeowners in their homeowners association, and he's come up with something called HOA syndrome.
Mm-hmm. He's identified a syndrome that he says many homeowners suffer from.
Yes, and so we want to find out. We heard it and brought it up on the show just last week. Mm-hmm. It was interesting, and Dr. Solomon was gracious to come on the show. Before we get to Dr. Solomon, I would like to just briefly say that if you would like a copy of our newsletter, it's a bi-monthly subscription, free. All you need to do is give us a call at New Concepts during the week at 952-922-2500. Ask for Courtney, and you'll start receiving that subscription. A lot of the topics we cover here on Where You Live is covered and further detailed in that newsletter.
And we want to hear from you today about any of the topics we're discussing or any topics that might be on your mind. Call us at 651-289-4488.
And with that, let's welcome to the show this morning Dr. Gary Solomon. Dr. Solomon, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
Just
good morning.
Fine, thanks. If you were just listening prior to coming on, ice dams, probably something you're not dealing with in Nevada.
Only if it's in a glass of alcohol or something.
We'll have to discuss that at some point. What kinds of problems that causes.
As where it should be.
Right.
Well, thank you for taking time to be with us here this morning. Now, we were interested. You've come up with something that you refer to as HOA syndrome.
Yes.
Tell us, what is HOA syndrome?
HOA syndrome is a psychological disorder based on a cluster of problems, pathologies, that are rooted in harassment. Unlike post-traumatic stress disorder, which usually has a single event tied to it, a car crash, an experience in war, a particular event, HOA syndrome has to it longitudinal harassment, wherein the individual suffers from a series of emotional problems related to issues, everything from depression to sleep anxiety, irritable bowel syndrome, somatoform disorders, fear of going to the mailbox, fear of leaving the house, fear of being fined, a wide range of issues and problems rooted in living in an HOA.
Tell me, how long have you noticed this as something that began to pique your interest?
I've been studying it now for about 2.5 years. I did it first phenomenologically, which means that it was an observational study. And then I started going into different HOAs and seeing if what I was observing was odd or an anomaly, or if it was consistent.
Mm-hmm. How did you go? I'm sorry, Dr. Solomon. How did you go into other HOAs? Did you set up interviews, or how did you do your research?
I simply contacted individuals that were in HOAs, living in HOAs, and then I would talk with them. I would also attend their HOA meetings and sit and listen to see how those meetings were being handled, and primarily observe the reactions on the part of the homeowners.
I see.
Now, how prevalent do you think something like HOA syndrome is?
It's difficult for me to know at this time. What I'm attempting to do now is go before the state senate, which ultimately I hope to bring to the U.S. Senate to get the necessary support to do a longitudinal study, which will include doing things such as MRIs, blood glucose psychologically in individuals and compare them to individuals who are not living in HOAs. The symptoms that I've observed do not appear to exist in individuals that do not live in HOAs.
I have a question about that, Dr. Solomon. Is there some other syndrome that we're maybe more familiar with that you would liken to HOA, just so we can kind of get our minds around the definition?
One of the syndromes would be post-traumatic stress disorder. There are a lot of similarities, but as I said, the root difference is harassment. Another one is battered wife syndrome.
I see.
Which was introduced about 35 years ago. Another one is barbed wire fever, which comes out of World War II. And then those are compared to the longitudinal studies that have come out of Stanford, Harvard, and the London studies, the White Hill study out of London.
You said you first noticed this when you purchased a home in your HOA?
That is correct.
What was it that you thought that you were seeing in people?
Well, to give you a description, I'm in a place called Las Vegas, Nevada. You might have heard of it.
Yes, I have.
And I happen to have a home that sits on top of a hill that overlooks the HOA. So I'm able to go onto my deck and look down on the HOA, which, by the way, is a rather extraordinary view of the city. And the first thing I noticed was that the streets were empty, that they were oddly quiet. But I didn't really give it much thought beyond that. I just thought it was a rather peaceful neighborhood. And then in a short period of time, because of the location of my home, people were dropping by or driving by and simply saying, "Are you having problems with your HOA? Do you have any? Is there anything going on? Are they bothering you?" And I was surprised at the number of people that asked. After that, because my background is in psychology, I'm a psychology professor, and I am a researcher, I couldn't help but be intrigued by what I was hearing, and from that point, I began taking a closer look at what was going on. And as things began to emerge in terms of a diagnosis and a possibility, I started observing other problems.
Now, in the I think the article that you wrote and posted on your website, you said that you likened it to a Stephen King-esque novel. You said people appeared to be abnormally anxious, nervous, hypervigilant, irritated, unsettled within the community. I'd like to ask you a few more questions about that. We've got to take a quick break, though, right now, Dr. Solomon. If you could bear with us, we've got to pay the bills. We will be back after these messages. You're listening to Where You Live with Gene and Tony on AM 1280, The Patriot.